Now that we know what elite networks look like and why they render an effect on inequality, let's dive into the main findings of the book. How extractive connections get translated into higher wages. Bottom line, if you were a politically connected executive in the US or the UK, for which I had the data, you had higher annual earnings when compared to your non-connected peers. In dollar amounts, this was $150,000. In pounds, about 90,000 pounds. That's quite the effect. Why, you might ask? Well, how is this justified? Because of the value you bring to your company as a board member if you have the right type of connection to a person in power. Let's unpack this. The first question that comes to mind is how can I even measure political connections? What I used is the BoardX database of over 750,000 individuals across 12,000 US firms and 3,500 UK firms. I had access to all their directors and senior managers, including their earnings, employment history, education, age, size of network, and most importantly, memberships in various organizations. Alongside executives, they also had some data on politicians. I had to do a lot of manual work for my PhD in removing these errors and cleaning the networks and making sure the matches work. And I also narrowed my focus only to the top level executives, board members, presidents, C-suite positions. Same for politicians, only senior level positions in governments. What I got in the end was a clear 0 to 1 indicator of whether a top executive is politically connected. For example, if an individual held a decision-making position in government prior to the start of his tenure in the company, that's coded as a political connection. But it must be a senior position, so manager, director, chief of staff, minister, or member of the legislature, either local or national. If they were a lower-level civil servant, or like researcher, officer, analyst, this doesn't count as a connection. The second part was whether the connection is established through the membership in the same organization. This includes club memberships like country clubs, golf clubs, Rotary clubs, or various other societies. Also, university or school boards like alumni organizations, NGOs, think tanks, trusts, foundations, charities, church groups, religious groups, military organizations, and even political parties. It was a brilliant data set. Now, two people belonging to the same organization or who used to work together are not necessarily friends, but it's easy to get to one another if they are. There's less degrees of separation. Recall how networks work, right? Through a central node, you get to meet so many others. Okay, so what does the data say? The size of your network matters, clearly, but the political connection matters much, much more. I controlled for a bunch of other factors: age, education, gender, total experience, the number of other board positions, equity ratio, etc. And I only compared, this is important, connected with non-connected executives on the same position within the corporate hierarchy within the same company. What I found was that the effect of political connections matters a lot. Let's start with the US. If you were a politically connected executive in the US between the years 2000 and 2016, you received a wage premium of over $150,000, it's about 13% on average, compared to your non-connected colleagues on the same positions. The size of your network also mattered, but much, much less than the political connections. For example, if you increased your network by 1,000 people, which is obviously a lot, your total wage premium is only $30,000. So that effect is clearly much smaller because it takes a while to increase network by that size. Also in the US, being a member of the same organization is much more important than having worked together before. In the UK, interestingly, it's the other way around. Working in government prior to the executive position matters much more than being the member of the same club or organization. The reason could be that, different clustering of people in such clubs. For example, in the UK, it's probably less likely that a club or a corporate executive invites a politician to be a member, at least as compared to the US. The individual effect is also somewhat smaller than the US, as a politically connected executive in the UK is rewarded a wage premium of around £90,000, about 6% higher salary, as compared to their non-connected colleagues, again within the same company. Another interesting finding for both countries is the firm effect. A firm that has one politically connected top executive will have total executive earnings in that firm higher by a whopping 132% in the US, compared to a firm that doesn't have any politically connected executives. The same effect also exists in the UK, but it's much smaller, only about 39%. So firms do indeed find value and reward politically connected executives, and they do it to a much greater extent in the US than in the UK. Overall, I was able to empirically prove the direct link between top corporate executives with top executive salaries and political connections, or to be more blunt, between political connections and inequality. If those at the top of the income distribution get a considerable wage premium for being connected to politics, then we are beginning to understand how political power directly influences social outcomes.